The stars hung silently in the deep void, distant suns scattered like shards of light across the black canvas of space. The Vyrian flagship glided gracefully into orbit around the planet Xylaris, its silver hull shimmering as it reflected the twin suns. Inside the bridge, Talira, commander of the Vyrian fleet, stood tall, her eyes scanning the holographic display with a sharp, measured precision. Her species had conquered dozens of systems, bending entire civilizations to their will, and yet this human delegation represented something different, something intriguing. Talira's mind raced with anticipation. The humans were known across the galaxy, not for their strength or technology, but for their unpredictable nature. Most species found them fragile, weak, and easily intimidated. That is why Talira had been tasked with assessing them personally. The Council expected her to ensure that humans understood their place in the galactic hierarchy. She had every intention of doing so. The Vyrian landing ship touched down on the surface with a gentle hum, the craft's landing gears sinking slightly into the reddish soil of Xylaris. Dust swirled briefly around its base before settling, and Talira stepped out, her uniform immaculate, her presence commanding. She was taller than any human, her features sharp and symmetrical, her eyes a reflective silver that seemed almost metallic in the bright sunlight. She expected obedience, respect, and perhaps even fear. After all, that was what all species had offered her so far. The humans were waiting near a line of sleek, unassuming transport shuttles. Among them, one figure stood out, not because of height, appearance, or technology, but because of his calm presence. Captain Elias Ward stood with his hands behind his back, shoulders straight, and eyes forward. Unlike the other humans, who shifted nervously, whispered, or avoided her gaze, Elias did nothing. He didn't flinch, he didn't hesitate, and he certainly didn't appear afraid. Talira's first instinct was disbelief. She had expected humans to tremble or at least glance nervously at her as she approached, yet here was one, calm and unyielding, observing her as though she were just another visitor on a planet he knew well. She felt a flicker of irritation, quickly masked by her composure. "Captain Elias Ward." Talira's voice resonated, a precise mixture of authority and curiosity. "I am Commander Talira of the Vyrian fleet. You have arrived on Xylaris at a moment of great significance. Are you prepared to understand your place?" Elias's lips curved in a faint, polite smile. "I'm here to learn, Commander Talira, and to understand each other's perspectives, if that is acceptable." Talira raised an eyebrow, silently impressed. Humans were known to resist intimidation, but few met it with calm, rational words instead of fear or defiance. She considered this as she subtly flexed her mental energy, a display meant to overwhelm the mind of lesser species. A shimmer of power radiated from her, invisible yet palpable, brushing against Elias's consciousness like a soft, insistent wind. Most species would stumble or cry out, but Elias didn't even blink. Instead, he straightened slightly and tilted his head, curiosity evident in his expression. "Interesting," he said, as if acknowledging a puzzle rather than a threat. Talira's eyes narrowed slightly. She was not accustomed to being treated as a curiosity, rather than a source of fear. Her species had perfected intimidation. It was almost an art form. Yet here, before her, was a human who seemed to welcome the challenge, not recoil from it. She stepped closer, letting her presence loom larger, expecting him to respond instinctively. Still, he remained calm, even curious, and his composure unnerved her more than a panicked reaction ever could. She decided to escalate. Around her, the air shimmered with energy as she projected images, visions of destruction, danger, and chaos, all designed to test the human's reaction. Shadows of massive creatures, impossible storms, and collapsing structures flashed briefly before his eyes. She expected him to react instinctively, to step back, to show some sign of fear. But he didn't. He simply took a slow, deliberate breath and studied the images, his mind analyzing rather than panicking. He seemed to be mapping them, calculating the patterns, even predicting the outcomes. Talira felt a strange mix of frustration and fascination. This was not the response she had anticipated. "You are different," she said finally, her voice low, almost a whisper only she could hear. "No species has ever stood before me like this." Elias's eyes met hers steadily. "Perhaps we are not like other species," he replied simply. "We survive by observing, understanding, and adapting. Fear does not always serve us." Talira blinked, momentarily taken aback. His words carried no challenge, no defiance, just reason. Yet the strength behind them was undeniable. It was the calm strength of someone who had faced overwhelming odds and had chosen to meet them without faltering. She realized, with a mixture of admiration and irritation, that she could not simply overpower him with the usual displays of authority. As they walked toward the human encampment, Talira observed the humans more closely. They moved with an energy that seemed ordinary at first glance, but there was a quiet determination in their eyes. Unlike species that relied solely on technology or sheer force, humans had something else: resilience, ingenuity, and an unshakable core of courage. Every glance and gesture spoke of a species that could endure, adapt, and thrive even in the face of overwhelming odds. Inside the human camp, Elias introduced Talira to the delegation. Scientists, engineers, and diplomats looked at her with cautious curiosity. Most of them had already observed her display of power and the human captain's reaction, and whispers passed among them. "He didn't even blink," one whispered. "How can he remain so calm?" Talira's sharp ears caught the murmurs, and she allowed herself a small, controlled smile. Yes, she thought. Let them see. Let them understand. Humans are not weak, but we shall see if they can withstand more than observation. For the next few hours, Talira observed the humans performing simple tasks under her scrutiny, analyzing their decision-making, their problem-solving, and their ability to cooperate. She noted how they handled tools, how they coordinated without constant communication, and how they anticipated each other's needs. Every skill they displayed seemed basic, almost primitive, yet effective in ways her species often overlooked. By evening, Talira decided it was time to test Elias more directly. She led him to a clearing outside the camp, where the ground was uneven, and jagged rocks created natural obstacles. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows that seemed to shift with an almost unnatural fluidity. "I want to see how you react under pressure," she said, her voice calm but firm. "This test will not harm you if you remain rational, but it will challenge your perception and composure." Elias nodded. "I am ready." Talira raised her hand, and the rocks around them began to move, lifted by her energy. Some spun in the air, others fell like tumbling obstacles, yet Elias moved with precision, sidestepping and predicting their paths. He did not run or panic. He calculated, adapted, and continued forward, his focus unwavering. Talira followed silently, her frustration growing, though she masked it well. No other species had ever handled such a test with ease. Normally, a display like this would reduce even the most confident beings to chaos. Yet here was a human who seemed almost attuned to it. After several minutes, she stopped, letting the rocks settle back to the ground. Elias was unscathed, his breathing steady, his expression calm. Talira's eyes studied him, searching for a crack, any sign of fear or hesitation. There was none. "You do not fear," she said finally, almost in disbelief. "Why?" Elias considered her question for a moment before replying. "Fear is a tool, not a master. I do not deny it exists, but I do not let it control me. Understanding the situation, assessing the options, and acting deliberately, these guide me more than fear ever could." Talira's expression softened, though she would never admit it aloud. There was a strength in his words, a kind of quiet power she had rarely encountered. It was not raw energy or domination, but an unshakable will, a clarity of thought, and a steadfast courage that seemed to radiate from his very being. As the first part of the day ended, Talira realized something profound. These humans, despite their apparent physical limitations, carried a force within them that many civilizations could not comprehend. It was subtle, intangible, and yet undeniable. She felt a mix of challenge and curiosity, a desire to understand, perhaps even to respect, this species that defied her expectations at every turn. When they returned to the human camp, the delegates noticed a change in her demeanor. The sharp tension that had accompanied her presence was softened, though not gone. There was still authority, but now it was mingled with something new: curiosity and cautious respect. Elias noticed it too, though he did not comment, understanding that actions often spoke louder than words. Night fell over Xylaris, the twin moons casting silver light across the camp. The stars above seemed brighter, almost as if the universe itself was acknowledging the unusual encounter. Talira stood at the edge of the human settlement, gazing at the stars, reflecting on the events of the day. She had come to intimidate, to assert dominance, and instead she had met calmness, courage, and intelligence that matched her own in unexpected ways. She wondered how many other humans displayed this unshakable nature, how many could face the unknown with the same composed determination. For the first time, she felt uncertainty, not about them, but about the assumptions she had held for centuries about the weakness of humans. Elias, meanwhile, returned to his tent, but sleep did not come immediately. He reflected on the encounter with Talira, noting her power, her precision, and her curiosity. He knew that fear was never truly about the unknown. It was about surrendering control, and he intended not to surrender, not to Talira, not to Xylaris, and certainly not to the galaxy's expectations. The first day had passed. The stars shone above, distant yet familiar, and the silence of space seemed to hum with possibilities. On Xylaris, two beings, one alien, one human, had met for the first time. Neither had been broken, neither had been bent, and neither had been fully understood by the other. And yet, in that meeting, a spark of something extraordinary had ignited, hinting at alliances, challenges, and discoveries that neither species could yet imagine. The universe was vast, but in that moment, it seemed just a little smaller and a little more alive. The morning light on Xylaris was pale and soft, spilling over the jagged landscape and illuminating the human camp. Captain Elias Ward rose with the sun, stretching and taking a moment to observe the alien terrain. He had spent the previous day studying Xylaris carefully, noticing the way the air shimmered near the horizon, the subtle movements of small creatures in the distance, and the unusual stability of the rock formations. For Elias, observation was the first step in understanding, and understanding was the key to survival. Talira, too, was awake, pacing near the edge of the human settlement. Her mind was restless, unsettled by the calm strength of the human captain. She had expected him to show fear, confusion, or hesitation, but all she had seen was focus, calculation, and an unshakable will. It was a new experience, one that challenged centuries of her assumptions about weak species and their place in the galaxy. Today, Talira decided, would be a test, not of strength, but of adaptability. Humans, she suspected, relied less on raw power and more on ingenuity, cooperation, and resourcefulness. She wanted to see if this was true under more intense pressure. The test began subtly. She arranged for small obstacles to appear around the camp, rocks shifting mysteriously, sudden gusts of wind that seemed to change direction unpredictably, and faint energy pulses that interfered with communications. The humans noticed immediately, but rather than panic, they approached each challenge methodically. Elias led them with calm authority. "Observe first," he instructed. "Do not react before you understand. Look for patterns, assess the risks, and coordinate your moves. Panic solves nothing." His words, simple as they were, carried weight. Humans followed his lead, moving with careful precision and finding solutions where others might have faltered. Talira observed from a distance, her silver eyes narrowing slightly. She expected hesitation, yet saw instead a species working in perfect harmony. It was fascinating and infuriating in equal measure. The humans were not merely enduring the challenges, they were learning from them, adapting, and even predicting the next complication. Curious to see Elias's reaction under more direct pressure, she summoned a localized storm. Clouds of energy swirled above the camp, lightning-like streaks dancing across the sky, though they did not harm anyone. It was designed to test composure, to see if fear would break the human's concentration. Elias, however, remained unflinching. He gathered his team and spoke calmly, assigning roles and adjusting their movements to account for the sudden changes. "The storm is predictable if you watch carefully," he said. "Notice the patterns, anticipate the shifts, and stay focused on your task." Talira could hardly believe what she was witnessing. Not only did he remain calm, but he also used the challenge as an opportunity to teach others. The humans began to move in perfect coordination, responding to the storm almost as though it were part of their training. She decided to push further. The next test involved a simulation of environmental hazards, rock slides, sudden fissures, and energy bursts meant to simulate natural disasters. Many species would have panicked, frozen in fear, or followed instinct blindly. Elias, however, led his team with careful thought, using observation and collaboration to navigate the dangers. With every passing hour, Talira's initial plan, to intimidate and dominate, was being quietly undermined. Elias was not broken by fear or pressure. He was strengthened by it. Every obstacle became an opportunity to demonstrate human resilience and creativity, traits the Vyrians rarely acknowledged in other species. By midday, Talira felt a strange mixture of admiration and frustration. She had expected humans to be simple, fearful, and compliant. Instead, they were confident, resourceful, and adaptive. Elias's calm presence seemed to inspire his team, encouraging them to approach challenges with logic rather than panic. Talira decided to intervene more directly. She appeared before Elias, her form towering and imposing, energy shimmering around her as though she were an unstoppable force. She spoke, her voice low and commanding. "Captain Elias Ward, you have shown resilience beyond expectation. But let us see if your mind can endure greater pressure. Follow me." Without waiting for a response, she led him toward a canyon on the outskirts of the camp. The canyon walls were steep and uneven, with narrow paths winding dangerously along jagged cliffs. She raised her hands, and the walls seemed to shift subtly, narrowing paths and creating the illusion of impending collapse. Elias approached cautiously but without hesitation. "I see the pattern," he murmured, almost to himself. "She is testing not just courage, but perception and strategy." As he moved forward, Talira increased the difficulty. Rocks slid gently from above, energy pulses flashed intermittently, and the path seemed to change as if the canyon itself were alive. Most species would have stumbled or frozen, but Elias moved with careful steps, analyzing each change before acting. His mind worked quickly, predicting the shifts and adjusting his movements in real time. Talira followed silently, studying him. Every decision he made was deliberate, measured, and rational. He did not rely on fear or instinct alone. He relied on observation, analysis, and adaptation. She realized with a mixture of respect and surprise that humans were not just survivors. They were thinkers, innovators, and collaborators. At one point, a massive rock formation began to descend, blocking the narrow path entirely. Talira expected panic, but Elias calmly assessed the situation. He directed his team to create a temporary bridge using equipment and debris, coordinating their movements with precision. Within moments, they had crossed safely, the challenge overcome not by strength, but by strategy and teamwork. The Vyrians observing from a distance were astonished. They had underestimated humans for centuries, assuming that fear and intimidation were universal tools. Yet here was a species that refused to be controlled by fear, that adapted quickly, and that solved problems in ways the Vyrians themselves rarely considered. By evening, the canyon challenge was complete. Elias and his team had navigated every obstacle, emerging unscathed and composed. Talira approached him again, this time with a measured nod. "You are remarkable," she said. "I expected fear, hesitation, or even failure. None came. Why?" Elias smiled faintly, a quiet expression of understanding and confidence. "Fear is natural, but it does not control us. Observation, logic, and teamwork guide our actions. We do not always act first. We think, and then we act." Talira considered his words carefully. She had spent centuries commanding respect through power and intimidation. Yet here, before her, was a human who commanded respect without raising a hand or threatening a life. It was an unfamiliar but undeniable force. As they returned to the human camp, Talira reflected on the day's events. Humans were not like other species she had encountered. They were adaptable, resourceful, and fearless in ways that were not easily measured. Elias's calm demeanor had not only guided his team, but had also challenged her own understanding of strength and leadership. That night, the human camp was quiet. Elias walked among the delegates, speaking softly, encouraging them, and reflecting on the day's challenges. He noted how fear can cloud judgment, how observation clarifies understanding, and how collaboration multiplies effectiveness. The humans listened, learning not just from the tasks they had faced, but from Elias's example of calm authority. Talira, watching from a distance, felt a subtle shift within herself. She had come to intimidate, to assert dominance, and to confirm her expectations of human weakness. Instead, she had encountered resilience, intelligence, and composure beyond what she had thought possible. She realized that perhaps the humans were not to be judged by their size, technology, or appearance, but by the strength of their minds and the courage of their hearts. As the twin moons rose over Xylaris, casting silver light across the red plains, Talira made a decision. She would continue to test the humans, not with fear or power, but with challenges that would reveal their potential. Elias had proven that humans could face danger without faltering, that they could adapt and innovate where others would fail. Now, she wanted to see how far their ingenuity and determination could go. Elias, unaware of the full scope of Talira's thoughts, prepared for the next day. He reviewed the events of the Canyon Challenge, considering how each obstacle had been overcome and what lessons could be applied in the future. For him, every challenge was an opportunity to learn, every danger a puzzle to solve. He understood that Talira's tests were not meant to harm, but to observe, and he welcomed them. The night passed quietly, with the humans resting, studying, and planning for the challenges ahead. Talira, too, retired, her mind restless with new questions about a species she had underestimated. She had expected fear, hesitation, and submission. Instead, she had seen courage, intelligence, and an unshakable will. For the first time, she wondered if humans were not just a curiosity, but a force to be reckoned with in the galaxy. The following morning, the camp awoke to the sound of distant winds and the soft hum of alien machinery. Elias stepped outside, observing the terrain and preparing his team for whatever tests Talira might devise next. He did not anticipate intimidation, he anticipated challenges, and he knew that with observation, logic, and collaboration, there was no obstacle that could truly overwhelm them. Talira appeared once more, her presence commanding yet tempered with curiosity. She gestured toward a series of structures on the far side of the plains. "Today, we will see how you adapt to complexity," she said. "You have proven calm under direct pressure, but can you navigate challenges that require strategy, intuition, and cooperation?" Elias nodded. "We are ready," he said. "Lead the way." And with that, the humans followed, moving confidently across Xylaris under the watchful eyes of a Virian commander who was beginning to understand that fear was not the measure of strength, and that courage could exist in forms she had never imagined. The morning sun rose over Xylaris, casting golden light across the human camp. Captain Elias Ward stood quietly at the edge of the settlement, observing the terrain beyond. The plains stretched into distant hills, dotted with unusual rock formations that seemed almost deliberately arranged, as if the planet itself were designed to test those who walked upon it. Today promised new challenges, and Elias's mind was already analyzing the possibilities. Talira appeared suddenly, her form towering and commanding, though there was a subtle change in her demeanor. Curiosity had replaced the initial intent to intimidate. She had observed the humans closely over the past 2 days and was fascinated by their adaptability, teamwork, and courage. Yet she remained determined to understand the limits of their abilities. She wanted to see if their calmness under pressure could extend to more complex challenges. Challenges that required not only courage, but strategy, intuition, and creativity. "Captain Ward," Talira said, her voice smooth and precise, "you have navigated obstacles with skill and composure. But now we will test the strength of your mind. Physical challenges are one thing, ethical dilemmas, strategic decisions, and unpredictable scenarios are another. Are you prepared?" Elias's calm voice carried a quiet confidence. "We are ready to learn and to respond. Understanding comes from experience, not assumption. Show us the challenge." Without another word, Talira gestured, and a series of structures appeared in the distance. They were unfamiliar to the humans, geometrical, intricate, and connected in ways that seemed almost impossible. Energy flows traced the lines of the structures, illuminating paths, doors, and panels that moved as if alive. Talira's creation was not meant to harm, but to test observation, logic, and intuition. The humans approached cautiously, led by Elias, who instructed them to analyze before acting. "Notice the patterns," he said. "Do not rush. Each step has consequences. Work together to understand what is required." The first challenge was a puzzle of light and reflection. Paths were blocked by panels that only shifted when illuminated in the correct sequence. The humans observed, discussed, and experimented, carefully adjusting mirrors, lenses, and angles until the first gate opened. Talira watched silently, impressed by their methodical approach. Each adjustment was precise, each decision collaborative, and each obstacle conquered with patience and intelligence rather than force. As they moved deeper into the structures, the complexity increased. Doors opened to mazes, pathways shifted, and patterns repeated with subtle differences. Talira introduced simulated threats, energy barriers, sudden changes in gravity, and pressure-sensitive floors. Humans, guided by Elias, adapted quickly, relying on observation, logic, and teamwork. Even when one path proved a dead end, they retreated calmly and chose another without frustration. Talira, observing from above, realized that humans did not merely survive challenges, they learned from them. Each obstacle, each change, became a lesson that they carried forward, applying knowledge gained to solve subsequent problems. It was a form of intelligence that the Vyrians valued but rarely saw in its purest form. As the humans navigated a particularly complex section, a narrow passage suspended above a chasm, Talira decided to test Elias directly. The walls of the passage began to shift subtly, creating the illusion of collapse. Energy pulses flashed intermittently along the floor, requiring precise timing to avoid. Most species would have panicked, but Elias remained calm. He studied the movements, calculated the intervals, and guided his team with quiet authority. "Step here," he instructed. "Now, wait for the next pulse. Move together." The team followed perfectly, their trust in Elias evident. Talira watched, her interest deepening. She realized that humans could inspire cooperation and confidence not through fear, but through composure, logic, and trust. She had underestimated this aspect of their strength. When they reached the final chamber, they were presented with a choice. 3 doors led out, each marked with symbols indicating different paths. One path appeared straightforward, but contained hidden obstacles. Another seemed complex, but led directly to the exit. The third was a mystery, with symbols that defied interpretation. Talira watched as Elias studied the symbols, assessing the risks and benefits of each choice. "This is not merely a test of courage," he said quietly to his team. "It is a test of judgment. Consider the information, trust your instincts, and decide together." After a brief discussion, they chose the path that seemed most uncertain, guided by reasoning rather than fear. The decision required careful navigation, adaptability, and collaboration, but ultimately led them safely to the exit. Talira observed, fascinated by their ability to make decisions under uncertainty, relying on intellect, intuition, and teamwork rather than instinct alone. The humans emerged into the sunlight, exhausted but triumphant. Elias looked at Talira calmly. "We did not act recklessly. We observed, considered, and adapted. Each obstacle became an opportunity to learn, not a threat to fear." Talira nodded slowly, the expression on her face betraying a mixture of respect and contemplation. "You are unlike any species I have encountered," she said. "Most are controlled by fear, by instinct, or by strength alone. You navigate challenges with clarity, intelligence, and courage. It is impressive." For the first time, she allowed herself to consider the possibility that humans were not just adaptable, they were extraordinary. Their resilience, composure, and ingenuity were qualities that many civilizations lacked, and qualities that could reshape expectations across the galaxy. The next challenge Talira devised was more subtle. She presented ethical dilemmas, scenarios where the humans had to make decisions affecting both themselves and an imaginary population. She expected hesitation, perhaps even panic, but Elias approached each scenario with careful thought. He weighed consequences, considered alternatives, and guided his team to solutions that were both fair and practical. Talira observed quietly, noting the human ability to balance logic, empathy, and foresight. They did not make impulsive decisions, nor did they rely solely on instinct. Each choice reflected thoughtfulness, collaboration, and an understanding of complexity that the Vyrians rarely encountered. As the day progressed, the humans faced more challenges, simulated environmental hazards, resource allocation puzzles, and strategic scenarios requiring planning and coordination. Elias led with quiet confidence, his calm presence guiding his team through situations that could have caused panic in less composed species. With each success, Talira's perception of humans deepened. By evening, Talira approached Elias again. You have faced challenges of perception, strategy, and ethics without faltering. You have guided your team through complexity with clarity and courage. How do you remain so unshaken? Elias looked at her steadily. We do not ignore fear or difficulty. We understand them, consider the best course of action, and act thoughtfully. Panic does not solve problems. Collaboration, observation, and adaptation do. Talira considered his words carefully. She had spent centuries commanding respect through fear, power, and authority. Here was a human who commanded respect not through intimidation, but through intellect, composure, and leadership. She realized that humans had a form of strength she had rarely seen, and that it was perhaps more enduring than brute force. As night fell over Xylaris, the stars glimmered above, and the human camp was quiet. Elias reflected on the day, noting the lessons learned, the challenges faced, and the ways his team had grown. For him, each challenge was not merely a test, but an opportunity to improve, to adapt, and to strengthen both himself and those around him. Talira, watching from a distance, reflected on the nature of strength and leadership. Humans were not predictable. They were not easily intimidated. They relied on reason, intuition, and collaboration, qualities that allowed them to navigate the galaxy in ways few other species could comprehend. She felt a mixture of admiration and unease, realizing that she could no longer view humans as weak or easily controlled. The next day promised even greater challenges, and both Talira and Elias knew that their interactions would continue to test boundaries, understanding, and resilience. Talira had begun to see humans as more than a curiosity. She recognized them as a species capable of extraordinary achievement, whose strength lay not in domination or fear, but in courage, intelligence, and collaboration. As the night deepened, the twin moons of Xylaris cast silver light over the red plains, highlighting the contours of the alien landscape. Elias and his team rested, while Talira observed silently, pondering the implications of what she had witnessed. The galaxy was vast, full of wonders and dangers, but humans, she realized, had the potential to stand on equal footing with even the most advanced species. The events of the day had shifted something fundamental in Talira's perspective. She had come intending to intimidate, to assert dominance, and to observe fear, but instead, she had discovered a resilience and ingenuity that challenged everything she thought she knew. Humans were not weak, predictable, or easily controlled. They were clever, adaptable, and unshakable in ways that demanded respect. Elias, unaware of the depth of Talira's contemplation, prepared for the next series of challenges. He knew that the universe was full of uncertainty, but he also knew that careful observation, reasoned judgment, and collaborative effort could overcome even the most complex problems. For him and his team, each obstacle was not a threat, but an opportunity. As the camp settled under the stars, both human and Virian watched silently, each learning from the other. The day had ended, but the lessons would resonate far beyond the plains of Xylaris. Humans had proven once again that calm intelligence, courage, and cooperation could withstand challenges that intimidation alone could never overcome. And Talira, the Virian commander who had come to assert authority, realized that the true measure of strength was not in fear, power, or dominance. It was in resilience, ingenuity, and the unshakable courage to face the unknown with clarity and confidence. The universe stretched endlessly above them, full of possibilities, but for the first time, it seemed as though humans were not merely surviving, they were shaping the future. The sun rose slowly over Xylaris, spilling warm light across the human camp. Captain Elias Ward stepped outside, stretching his shoulders and taking a moment to observe the alien landscape. After days of challenges and tests, He had grown more familiar with the planet's strange terrain, its unusual rock formations, and the subtle patterns of energy that seemed to hum beneath the surface. Today would not be merely about tests. It would be about understanding, cooperation, and a shared goal. Talira appeared silently, her silver eyes reflecting the rising sun. Her demeanor had changed over the past days. She no longer viewed humans as a species to intimidate or control. Instead, she regarded them with cautious respect, fascinated by their ingenuity, adaptability, and unshakable courage. She had seen their composure under pressure, their intelligence in problem-solving, and their ability to inspire teamwork. "Captain Ward," she said, her voice calm but commanding, "the challenges of the past days were designed to test perception, strategy, and composure. You have proven yourself and your team capable beyond expectation. Today, we face a challenge that will require cooperation between our species." Elias nodded, his expression thoughtful but calm. "We are ready. Understanding and collaboration are as important as courage. Lead the way." Talira gestured toward a distant canyon, one that stretched across the horizon, its cliffs steep and jagged, its depths shadowed by the morning light. Energy pulses flickered along the walls of the canyon, signaling instability in the terrain. Reports from the Virian scouts indicated that sections of the canyon were at risk of collapse due to an unusual geological reaction, a rare phenomenon that threatened both the local ecosystem and the Virian outpost nearby. "This is a test of not only skill but judgment, cooperation, and adaptability," Talira explained. "We must act quickly to stabilize the area. Failure will result in significant damage. You and your team must work with the Virians to prevent disaster." Elias studied the canyon carefully. He observed the patterns of the energy pulses, the formation of the cliffs, and the layout of the outpost. "We will approach this systematically," he said. "Observe the risks, plan the actions, assign roles, and execute together. Panic or hasty decisions will create failure. Precision and cooperation will ensure success." The human team began organizing immediately, dividing responsibilities. Engineers assessed structural weaknesses, scientists monitored energy fluctuations, and technicians prepared tools and equipment. Talira watched, impressed by their methodical approach. Unlike other species she had commanded, humans did not wait for orders blindly. They evaluated the situation, anticipated problems, and coordinated among themselves. As they approached the canyon, the first obstacle became evident. A section of cliff had already partially collapsed, leaving a narrow pathway suspended above a deep chasm. Any misstep could trigger a further collapse. Elias studied the route carefully. "We will secure the path before crossing," he said. "Engineer teams, prepare support anchors. Scientists, monitor stability in real time. Everyone else, stay ready to assist." Talira observed as the humans coordinated flawlessly. They placed support anchors at calculated intervals, monitored the structural integrity with precision instruments, and adjusted their plan as conditions changed. Their calm efficiency allowed them to stabilize the first section quickly, minimizing risk. The Virians, who had initially underestimated humans, began assisting as well. Talira coordinated with Elias, providing guidance on energy patterns and structural weaknesses. Elias accepted her advice, integrating it with his team's observations. Together, human and Virian teams worked as one, their combined intelligence and resourcefulness overcoming the dangerous terrain. As they moved deeper into the canyon, another obstacle appeared. Energy pulses began fluctuating rapidly, creating unstable zones along the canyon floor. Elias paused, analyzing the situation. "We need a path that avoids the most unstable areas," he said. "Use observation to predict the safe zones. Move carefully, step by step, and adjust as necessary." The humans moved deliberately, observing the terrain, predicting the energy patterns, and guiding each other safely across. The Virians followed, relying on their advanced technology, but also learning from the humans' calm judgment. Talira noticed that Elias's leadership inspired confidence in both species. His composure and clear thinking turned a potentially chaotic situation into an organized operation. Halfway through the canyon, a section of rock suddenly shifted, threatening to block their path completely. The humans reacted immediately. Elias directed a team to stabilize the rocks, while another group created an alternate route using portable scaffolding. Every movement was precise, every decision calculated. The humans' ability to adapt quickly and coordinate under pressure prevented disaster. Talira, observing closely, felt a sense of admiration. Humans were not the species she had once believed, fragile, fearful, or easily dominated. They were resilient, resourceful, and capable of inspiring others to work together. Elias was the embodiment of these qualities, leading without intimidation, guiding with clarity, and maintaining calm under pressure. When they reached the end of the canyon, the final challenge awaited. The outpost they were protecting sat precariously on a narrow ledge, with the canyon walls showing signs of imminent collapse. Talira and Elias surveyed the situation. Both species had technology and tools at their disposal, but success would depend on strategy, timing, and cooperation. Elias took a deep breath. "We must act together," he said. "Humans and Virians working as one. Observe, plan, execute, and adapt as conditions change. We succeed only if we act with clarity and unity." Teams moved into position, setting up stabilizers, reinforcing structural supports, and coordinating energy flows to prevent further collapse. Talira observed, silently noting how Elias communicated calmly, assigning roles with clarity and encouraging collaboration rather than authority. The human's leadership was subtle but effective, blending logic, observation, and intuition with empathy and trust. As the teams worked, a sudden shift in the canyon walls caused debris to fall dangerously close. A Virian worker froze, unsure of the best course of action. Elias reacted instantly, directing the humans to create a temporary barrier and guiding the Virian safely out of danger. His calm decisiveness prevented panic, and the operation continued without delay. Over the next several hours, the combined teams worked tirelessly. They reinforced supports, redistributed energy flows, and monitored the canyon's shifting structure. Each obstacle required careful analysis, quick adaptation, and coordinated action. Elias remained a steady presence, observing, guiding, and adjusting the plan as needed. Talira noticed that the humans did not act out of fear. They acted out of understanding, logic, and determination. Finally, the canyon was stabilized. The outpost was secure, the energy flows normalized, and the risk of collapse had been eliminated. Both humans and Virians stepped back, exhausted but relieved. Elias surveyed the teams, noting the unity and success achieved through collaboration. Talira approached him, her silver eyes reflecting a mixture of admiration and contemplation. "Captain Ward," she said, "you have guided your team and ours through challenges that would have overwhelmed most species. Your leadership, composure, and insight have prevented disaster. I underestimated humans. You have proven that strength is not measured by fear or force, but by intelligence, courage, and cooperation." Elias smiled faintly. "Leadership is not about commanding others through fear. It is about guiding, observing, and making decisions that ensure success for everyone. Strength is in the ability to think clearly, act wisely, and inspire cooperation." Talira considered his words, realizing that they encapsulated the very essence of the human's resilience. She had approached this encounter with the expectation of intimidation, assuming that humans would falter under pressure. Instead, she had discovered a species capable of extraordinary courage, creativity, and leadership. Elias had demonstrated that human strength was not measured by physical prowess or raw power, but by intellect, adaptability, and unshakable composure. As night fell over Zalaris, the twin moons cast silver light across the plains. Humans and Virians gathered at the edge of the canyon, observing the outpost they had saved together. There was a sense of quiet accomplishment, a shared understanding that cooperation had overcome challenges that neither species could have managed alone. Talira spoke to the humans and Virians alike. Today we have achieved something remarkable, not through fear, not through domination, but through understanding, observation, and collaboration. Let this be a lesson for all of us. Strength comes in many forms, and courage is often found in the calm mind and steady heart. Elias nodded, feeling a sense of fulfillment. The mission had not been easy, but it had reinforced the principles he believed in: observation, intelligence, and teamwork. The humans had demonstrated their abilities not by defiance, but by composure, clear thinking, and adaptability. They had faced a species renowned for power and authority, and they had not only survived, they had excelled. Over the following days, the Virians formally recognized the human delegation's accomplishments. Scientists, engineers, and leaders acknowledged the unique qualities that humans brought to the galaxy. Talira herself publicly praised Elias and his team, acknowledging that humans were capable of extraordinary achievements through intellect, courage, and collaboration. Humans and Virians began working together, combining technology, observation, and creative problem-solving. Plans were made to explore Zalaris more fully, improve the outpost, and collaborate on future missions. Elias reflected on how remaining calm, thoughtful, and cooperative had earned not only success, but respect across species. Talira observed the humans interacting with her people. Their confidence was quiet, but present, their intelligence evident in every action. She realized that intimidation alone could never command the kind of respect humans had earned through composure, insight, and courage. For the first time, she understood that true strength was not fear. It was the ability to remain steady under pressure, to observe and adapt, and to inspire cooperation through example. The story of Elias Ward and the human delegation spread across Zalaris and beyond. Other species began to reconsider their assumptions about humans, recognizing a unique combination of intelligence, resilience, and courage. Elias had not only survived challenges that tested perception, strategy, and ethics, but had also reshaped how an entire species viewed humanity. As the twin moons shone brightly over Zalaris, Elias stood at the edge of the canyon, looking at the stars above. He understood that the universe was vast, filled with challenges and opportunities. Yet he also knew that humans, through their resilience, ingenuity, and steady courage, could meet those challenges with clarity and strength. Talira joined him silently. Together they gazed at the horizon, reflecting on the cooperation, understanding, and mutual respect that had developed over the past days. There were no words necessary. The humans had proven themselves, not through intimidation or force, but through intellect, composure, and courage. And in doing so, they had reshaped perceptions, created bonds, and demonstrated the enduring power of the human spirit. The universe stretched endlessly above them, full of wonders and possibilities. Yet on Zalaris, in that quiet moment, humans and Virians stood side by side, united by mutual respect, shared accomplishment, and the understanding that true strength was measured not by fear, but by courage, intelligence, and cooperation. And Captain Elias Ward, calm and composed as ever, knew that this was only the beginning of humanity's place among the stars.